So in this video, we're going to be creating the carabiner top here. So let's go ahead, let's get down to business. What I'm going to go ahead and start by doing is I'm going to go to this front plane here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this elliptical sketch up here at the top. So we can click this drop down, we can go to the ellipse. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ensure that we are centered here. I'm going to go ahead and just create an ellipse. I'm going to make sure that that is vertical just like that. And then we're just going to click right here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually get these measurements using the dial caliper. And so since it's been a little bit of time, I'm going to make sure that this is calibrated here, all good to go. And so it's all calibrated. I'm going to go ahead and tighten that screw down there. Also, of course, we wanted to make sure that this guy was loosened. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually get the major axis here of this ellipse. And what I'm saying is that that is 1.132. 1.132. So I'm going to go ahead and type in here 1.132. And then what I also want to end up doing is getting that minor axis as well. So that minor axis, I want to basically go to that point where it is the furthest away. And what I'm saying now is that this is 0.433. So 0.433. So 0.433. We can go ahead and press enter. What I could also end up doing is I could actually find this thickness here. And so the thickness of this guy is 0.14. 0.14. What I can also do is then end up getting this. So 0.14. This thickness is 0.7. So 0.7. Let's go ahead. Let's do some quick maths here. So we got 0.7 minus 0.14 times 2. So we actually have that. So we just mathematically determined what this inner negative space is going to be for the carabiner clip. So we'll end up going with that where it's 0.42 instead. What I also want to end up doing is I want to find the distance, how far this inner part is here from the bottom of this. So if I end up doing that, I got 0.427. 0.427. So I'm going to actually create a line here. It's going to be construction line. I'm going to make sure that it's right at that point. And then I'm going to dimension that out so that it's right here. Now, what I just ended up finding, let me run that dimension one more time here. Let me make sure we're still calibrated there pretty well. And we're going to go ahead and let's get that one more time. So 0.449 is actually what I end up getting there. So I'm going to type in 0.449. So now I know that that is going to be occurring from that far away. And so now I can also end up creating that offset. So I'm going to offset this guy now. That thickness that we ended up finding, this is pretty consistent. The thickness is 0.1. So I think we got 0.147. Yeah, 0.147. Let's just double check that that's what we got earlier. Our 0.14. So let's see here, 0.14. This guy's now 0.147. Let's see here, 0.147. Okay, so I'm actually getting 0.147. Let's go ahead and let's set this up to be 0.147. I'm going to also make the adjustment here where this is instead going to be 0.147 in there. So now that's looking pretty good. We've got that thickness there too. And so now we could end up actually extruding this guy. And so we could end up going extrude. So we go here, extrude. Now we want to make sure that that is symmetric. And then what we can do is we can put in this, this width here. So the thickness of this is 0.275. So 0.275, exactly 0.275. So we'll put in that thickness there. And so now as you can end up seeing in here, we do have this where this interferes with this guy. So I'm going to actually go to sketch 7. I'm going to do a new part just so that we can end up right-clicking this, renaming this to the carabiner top, just like that. And what I also want to end up doing is I want to actually set this guy up so that we can end up creating that little piece here too. So we got to create this little attachment point on there. Now what I'm noticing is that this does look like this. Actually, it has a straight cylindrical piece here for about 0.159 inches, 0.159 inches. And so what I'm going to do is we're actually going to create a sketch that's going to be on here. So we're going to go sketch. I'm going to end up using the use project convert. I'm going to use that same diameter, right? Because it should be the same diameter. I'm going to end up extruding that. Now, just as we said, that is the 0.159. So 0.159. Now, what I want to do is I want to end up, this would be the case that we would want to add this now. We want to add this to the carabiner top. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to do a new part, and we're going to temporarily just keep that as a name. Eventually, we're going to end up actually adding it to this carabiner top here. What I can do now is here, we're going to create a sketch that's going to be on here. And what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use the use project convert. I'm going to get that. I'm going to also grab this. I'm going to create a center point. Actually, no, let's not do center point rectangle. Let's just do a corner rectangle. I'm going to just create this here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set this up so that this guy is tangent. So this line is tangent to this line. This line is tangent to this line. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually extrude and I'm going to remove. And so we can exit out of that. We're just going to select this guy right here. Now, what is this telling us? Boolean would result in a non-manifold body, and that is because it is actually tangent to that location. So what I'm going to do is we can go back to this. I'm going to make sure that this is, we actually don't need that to be symmetric. We're going to go back into sketch 14. We're going to actually change this. We're going to make sure that that is not tangent. And what we're going to do is we're going to move this down ever so slightly on there, just like that, so that now we have that disconnected. What I'm going to end up doing with that part 5 is I'm going to take this guy as well as this guy. And what we're going to do is we're going to loft these two faces together. So that's going to loft those two faces together and connect them there. And then so now what I want to do is I want to use the Boolean tool. And we're going to actually union the carabiner top, part 5, and also part 6, so that all of those become the same. We're going to deselect the keep tools option. And so now that's going to actually connect those surfaces together. So what we want to end up doing here is we want to go ahead and click the fillet tool, and you want to select these two outer pieces here. Now we're just going to go ahead and mess around with different radiuses of curvature. What I ended up using here was about 3 millimeters for the radius of curvature. What we can also end up doing is let's try to apply it here as well, and then also here on these other portions of this. And so that is looking pretty solid where we're getting nice connection. I'm going to also try to apply it onto here. So now, yeah, that's looking pretty good. We can also try to fillet this guy. We might have to hit that afterwards after we fillet this. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that. Now what I'm also going to do is let's try to actually fillet these edges as well. So we can fillet those. And so now we're going to apply that fillet there. We got the green check mark. And so that's looking all pretty good. So now as you can see, we have that carabiner top. Now the one thing that we need to do is we do need to still end up, if I hide this mid-body housing, we do still need to have this cutout, right, for those threads. So that's what we're going to be doing next. What we're going to be doing here is we're actually going to be creating a new sketch. So we're going to go to the front plane. We're going to create this sketch. It's going to be sketch 15 for us. What we want to do is we want to actually hide the carabiner top. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the use project convert tool. I'm going to actually click on here. And then I'm going to click right here as well. And we're basically going to be creating an outline of this material here that we're going to remove from our actual carabiner top piece. And I'm going to actually take this line. We're going to end up running a line that's going to be right here about. We're going to run this down to this bottom. We do want to make sure that that is a vertical line, so we can do that. And then next, we're going to use the use project convert tool again. We're going to create that line there. What I also want to end up doing is I want to go to this line, find the midpoint of that, and we're going to run this down here. And we want to make sure that that is a vertical line. So what I can do is I can click that, and then we can go to the geometric constraint of vertical. And we can end up using that. Be very careful as I was doing that I did not snap that into place so that it was on the midpoint of that line. And so now what we can do is we can end up revolving this. And so we're going to select, we can hide this mid-body housing. We want to select these two sketches. We want to remove the revolve axis is going to be the center there. And then in terms of that merge scope, we're going to select the carabiner top. And so now if you look at the bottom, we've got that where that's removed. So we can do green check mark. Now up next, what I want to do is I want to actually use the Boolean tool to actually remove this material from that carabiner top. So if we go in here, we go Boolean. Now we're going to go to subtract. Now this is where we're going to be careful. The tools is going to be this guy right here. The target is going to be our actual carabiner top on here. Now we do want to create an offset. Now the offset is going to be 0.001. Now you could try the offset all tool. Whenever I do that, however, it does run into this issue, right? And so what we want to do instead of offset all is we want to actually hide our carabiner top, and we want to select the faces to offset. And we're going to go in here and we're going to select all of these faces that are on this guy. And so I can select this face here, I can select this face here, this face, and this face. And then finally, we want to also select this face here as well. So now I can do green check mark. And then whenever we look at this, we'll see that there is that minor offset. And so we can go back to our mid-body housing. We can hide that. And so now, as you can see, we actually have that where there is that cutout on there. All right. And then use the transform tool. We're going to actually create a copy of this part right here. And so we're going to actually do just copy in place. We're going to press the green check mark. We're going to rename this to be carabiner clip. Because we're actually going to end up using the Boolean tool eventually to actually remove or subtract parts from that. So now the next thing that we want to do is we're going to go to this pro plane. We want to create a sketch. We're going to go ahead and use the use, project, and convert. And we're going to go ahead and create or click on these two lines to create those outlines. So now if we go to the carabiner top, you'll end up seeing that we have this. What we want to end up doing is creating a line. Now this line is going to be coincident to this inner part of that ellipse. We're going to end up dimensioning this out to be 0.1 inches in length. And then what we're going to do is we're going to press escape. Now in terms of the dimension from this point down to the bottom here, that's going to end up being 1.225 inches. Then what we want to do is go ahead and create another line. And so we're going to create this line right here. We're going to make sure that it's just like right about here. We're going to use the dimension tool. And we're going to actually set this up to be a 30-degree line. We're going to also extend this now to the edge here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create this line right here as well. We're going to make sure that it is not established to be vertical of anything or any other geometric constraints other than just that coincident. And what we're going to do is we're going to click right there. We're going to then end up dimensioning from this point to right here. That should be, let's try that out again. We're going to press Control Z. Going to go dimension here and here. We want to make sure that we're at this angle here. We're going to type in 0.1 inches, just like that. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to create another line that's going to be coincident to this arc as well as this arc. What we are going to do then is we're going to actually use the dimension tool once again. We're going to dimension from here to here. That is going to end up being 0.625 inches. And then we're going to dimension from here to here. And that is going to be 0.682 inches. And so, as you can see, we're creating that little cutout for that carabiner clip to go in. What we could do now is press the green check mark. And so now what we want to end up doing is we want to go to the extrude. We're going to end up first going through just like both of these. We want to go remove. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually offset this. And so we can go to the carabiner top here. We can end up using the starting offset. And what we're going to enter in there for that starting offset is going to be 0.063 inches. So 0.063 inches. We want to also flip the direction of that. And so now you can see that it has that little starting offset. We're going to later mirror this so that the other side has that. But there is some material here that clip needs so that it can hit in there. So now we're going to do that. Another thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to extrude again. We're going to bring back up sketch 16. I'm going to hide this part. I'm going to go into here. We're going to remove the entirety of that. So this bottom part here. And so if I bring this back up, you can end up seeing all of that being removed. And so you can also end up going symmetric even if you would like as well. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to use the mirror tool. So mirror, we're going to end up instead of part mirror, we're going to go feature mirror. The feature that we're going to mirror is going to be extrude 10. We can go to this mirror plane here. It's going to be on the front. And then now we want to click reapply features. So that's going to reapply that little cutout up there on the top. All right. So now we can press the green check mark. And so the next part of this is we want to end up adding in the actual little cutout. And so it's this point right here at the bottom. So that little cutout. So what we're going to end up doing is the following. We're going to go ahead and we're going to create a, let's see here, we're going to create a sketch that's going to be on this right plane. And we're going to use the use project to convert. And what we want to do is select that line right there. And so that line is going to be at the very, very bottom of that ellipse. And so now you can see over on this side, we've got that. What we can do now is do the center point rectangle tool. We're going to make sure that that is centered in the middle. I'm going to make sure that that is coincident on there. And then so now what we can specify is this width. And so this width is going to be 0.12 inches wide. And we want to ensure that that is in the center, so we can use the coincident tool. We're going to make sure that that point is coincident. Let's see here, we can end up using the, let's see, we don't want to do that. So we do want to make sure that that's coincident. Let's see here, can we do the use project convert? No, don't want to do that. Let's make sure, oh, you got to make sure we're spot on here. So now we can use the use project convert. So we can make sure that that is coincident with those lines. So we're going to go here. This line right here should be coincident with this guy. And then this line right here should also be coincident with this guy. Okay, perfect. So now we know that that rectangle is centered in there. We can now go ahead and remove this. So we want to go remove just like that. We're going to flip the direction here so it goes out this way. Green check mark. And so now that is looking pretty solid there. Up next, what we want to end up doing is we want to bring back our clip file now, or the clip part. And we're going to end up using the Boolean tool for this. So we're going to go Boolean. We're going to go subtract. The tool is going to be the actual carabiner top. The target is going to be the actual clip. And so what we can do is we can subtract this. We can use offset. I can hide the clip. And then now what we can do is we can specify an offset distance and faces that we want to actually offset. So we're going to set this up so that there is a slight interference fit here still. So we're going to have 0.005 inches for the offset. And then down here at the bottom, we can end up messing around with that a bit more here. So we'll have those be offset, but I mean, we could end up just putting this guy in there too. So let's go ahead, let's do that. Boom, boom, and boom. And so now if we bring back in that clip, we can see that there's that slight separation distance there. So we do want that. We can press the green check mark. So now we've got this actual clip that's in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch the appearance of that. So our clip should be the same color as our actual rubber grip. So we've got that same color there now. What I want to do in here is I want to actually increase that distance as well. So that whenever we're using this clip, if we end up bringing this back, that it's not going to end up rubbing up, or this metal or this plastic piece is not going to end up interacting with that and get caught on that. So what we can do is we can go in here, we can create a sketch that's going to be right on this guy. And so I'm going to create a sketch, and we can end up using the use project to convert if we'd like to. And we can end up creating this guy here. What I'm going to then do is I'm going to offset that line. So we're going to offset this by a distance of, let's say, 0.035 inches. What I'm also going to do is green check mark that. Then I'm going to use the extend tool. We're going to extend that out. That's already extended out there. We're going to use the use project to convert again on both of those sides. And then now we're going to go ahead and extrude. And then we want to remove. And then I can end up hiding the clip here. We can select that. I'm going to flip this direction. The merge scope is going to be the clip itself. So now whenever we bring that back in here, we can see that that is applied. What we're also going to end up doing is we're going to just mirror that. So that is applied, that feature is applied to the other side as well. So we're going to go back to feature mirror. The mirror plane, it's not going to be the right plane, but it's going to be that front plane. The features to mirror is going to be extrude 13. And what we want to do is reapply those features so it's applied on both sides. All right. So now what we can end up doing here is we also want to end up cutting that out from the bottom as well. So let's go pop back into let's see, now we can actually hide this carabiner, not the carabiner clip, but the carabiner top. Let's go ahead and do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in here and create a sketch. And I'm going to actually, we could end up using the spline tool if we want, or we could use the tangent arc. We can end up using the use project to convert. Let's try that out. And then we'll end up using this guy here. Let's go ahead and create the tangent arc. And let's try to just, okay, so it would not allow us to do that. Let's just use the 3-point arc. We'll start here. And then we'll end up going to right here. And then we'll kind of create this guy right there. And so now what we want to also do is use the use project convert. We're just going to outline this guy so that we can remove all of that material that's in there. So green check mark, we're going to select that, select these guys. We're going to go extrude remove. We're going to go remove there. And then just the merge scope is going to be that carabiner clip so that that doesn't have that extra material there on the bottom. And then we can end up bringing back in that top piece here. So let's zoom in. Everything is looking pretty solid there. And so now the next part is we want to create that little cutout so that the dowel pin can actually go through there. And then also we got to create that little cutout for the torsion spring to be able to fit in there. Doing is we can add in the dowel pin hole. So we're going to go ahead and hide the actual carabiner top. I'm going to go ahead and pop in here into the sketch. I'm going to actually use the use project and convert. And I'm going to click on this guy right here as well as this guy. What we want to end up doing is we want to actually create a circle. So that's going to be where the dowel pin is going to be going in there. Now, in terms of that circle's diameter, we're going to end up using a diameter of 0.06 inches. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create some construction lines here. So I'm going to create a construction line that's going to be going out. I'm going to ensure that that is tangent. As you can see, if I end up moving this, it eventually snaps into place and has that little tangent icon. So we're going to go ahead and click that. What I'm going to also do is create another line. I'm going to start this construction line from here. If I end up moving this as well, you're going to end up seeing that we have that perpendicular construction line, or the perpendicular little geometric constraint show up as well. So if I click on that, we've got that applied. Now what I can do is I can set this up so that this center point of the circle is also coincident with that line. And then what we're also going to end up doing is we're going to actually throw a dimension. So we can dimension from this line to this center point here. So I'm going to press D on the keyboard so we can dimension that. And that's going to be 0.1 inches on there. And then so now what I can do is I can use the extrude tool. I'm going to deselect that. I'm going to go to just that circle there. I want to use remove. I want to make sure that it's symmetric. And then just to ensure that it also goes through our clip, we're going to actually, so not only through the clip, but also through that carabiner top, we're going to select that. You could also end up doing merge with all. That will remove it through all the material it's currently going through. And so now that is how we add in that little dowel pin hole there. So up next, what we're going to end up doing is we're going to create that little cutout for our torsion spring to be able to fit in here. And so we can go to the front plane here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here. And then we're going to actually use the project tool again. We're going to actually use the offset. Then what I can end up doing is I can set this offset to be set up so that it is 0.03 inches out. And so we've got that. Then what I want to do here is let's go ahead and let's hide that carabiner top. We want to ensure that we're going all the way through this. And so I'm going to just click here to confirm that offset. And now what I can do is I can bring up my spline tool. Now we want to get a continuation of this. So I can go right here. I can press escape. Now what I want to do is I want to go to tangent. I'm going to select this. And then I want to make sure that that line is tangent to that. That's basically going to continue that little arc or that ellipse there. So then now what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are capturing all of this. So we're going to go just right out to here. And then we're going to want to go up to the top here. Now from the top, we're going to actually set up this so that it's 0.165 inches from the top there. So we can start, somewhere along right here. We're going to end up having this go through here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a point. Now that point is going to be coincident to, so if we go over here, it's coincident to that line as well as this guy. And then now I can run that dimension. So the dimension from that point to right here, that's going to be 0.165 inches. So 0.165 inches. And then we can go ahead and bring this guy down. How we're going to do that is we're going to ensure that this line is parallel to this line right here that we've created earlier. So we end up using that. Then now this is where we're going to actually ensure that these are connected. And so this is going to create that closed shape. So if I hide that clip, we can end up seeing that it's got this guy created here. So everything should be connected on here. We can just do some last checks. Should be the case where sketch 21 is good to go. So now if I click on this, we can end up actually going to extrude. I go to that clip we want to remove, and I want to make sure that this is symmetric. How much I want to remove is going to be 0.048 inches of depth. And so remember that is symmetric. And we want to remove that just from that carabiner clip there. And so now we've got that. Now, if we go back into the top piece, we've got all of that lined up. Now, the other thing that we want to do is we want to actually create that little back cutout. And so if you're looking at this, you can see the back cutout on there. Just past that, that's where that torsion spring, that end piece of the torsion spring, so this little shorter side of the torsion spring, it's going to be fitting into there. So how we can do that is we could go back to sketch 21. And, what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to use the this guy right here. And then what we can do is we can end up continuing that as well. So that little piece right here, we're going to send it down to somewhere around right here. Then what I'm going to do is just once again, I'm going to end up using that tangent. So I'm going to select this guy and then this little piece right there. That's going to ensure that that is tangent. Then we can run that. I'm going to also ensure that this is kind of set up at that same distance. So this has the same cutout here. And then what we can end up doing is we can end up using the use project convert so that we create this. Then I'm going to go ahead and actually run this guy up here. And then we can capture all of this. We can end up running this so that this guy does end up getting cut off. I am going to make sure that this line, we're going to try to do the perpendicular here. So we're going to try to make that perpendicular so that this line is perpendicular to that edge. We could see if we can use the use project convert again. So perpendicular right here. And so it's not actually allowing us to do that. So I'm just going to kind of make sure that this looks perpendicular there. There we go. Perfect. And so now what we want to do is we want to end up hiding that top piece. So let's see if we can hide that. We're going to bring back up sketch 21. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove that material again. So I'm going to go to remove and I'm going to go 0.048 inches again. We're going to make that symmetric. And then in terms of that merge scope, it's going to be the carabiner top. And so now as we can see there, if we press the green check mark, we've got that actual little hole indentation for our torsion spring. So that right there, we have those steps. The next part of what we're going to do is we're going to create that actual torsion spring in here. So it's going to be going inside this little slot here. It's going to wrap around this circle part, right, where the dowel pin is going to fit in there. So it's going to keep the torsion spring as well as all those parts in place. Then our torsion spring is going to wrap around over here and basically rest. It's one of the legs over here on this side. So what we're going to do that's going to be pretty helpful here is we're going to use the section view. Now they're going to prompt you for an actual plane to use whenever you first use this. If we go in here, we can actually select this plane. And if we switch that around, we could actually go here to this plane. And then what you can do is you can always extend this out a bit. And so as you can see, we could rest it about right there. So we can press the green check mark here. So first steps, what do we want to end up doing? So what we're going to do first is we're going to end up creating a plane. And so we're going to pop into here. I'm going to create a plane. And basically I'm going to offset this distance. Now this torsion spring that we actually have here, that torsion spring is going to end up having a width, or it has a diameter of 0.02, so 0.02 inches. And so what we want is we want to have at least 0.01 inches to the left of it, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a plane here, and I'm going to offset this by 0.01 inches. Now I'm offsetting it from this face right here, right? Because that's where that torsion spring is going to be coming down there. So we can go ahead and do that. What I'm also going to end up doing is I'm going to actually I'm going to turn my section view off. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to hide plane 3 so that we can select that face. And then I'm also going to select this face. I'm also going to create a new plane. It's going to be a mid plane. Then we're going to go ahead and press the green check mark there so that we have plane 4 created. Now the last plane that we're going to end up creating, it's going to be, we can hide plane 4, it's going to be 0.01 inches away from this face. Now why are we going 0.01 inches away? It is because we don't want our torsion spring to actually be rendering within this face. So that's why we're going 0.01 inches in there. And so now we have those 3 planes created. What we're going to do next is we're going to create the actual sweep path for our torsion spring. So we're going to create basically a curve. It's going to be a composite curve. It's going to be 3D, and it's going to be the actual path that we want to end up sweeping so that we can create our torsion spring. So now that we have these 3 planes, what I'm going to first start off by doing is going to plane 3. So in plane 3, I want to create a new sketch. I'm going to also end up using our section view. And so if you're bringing this up, just as we were saying, you can end up clicking right. Oops, let's not click there. We're going to click right here on this face, and you can end up dragging this out just a little bit. But what we want to end up doing is basically creating a circle on here that's going to be offset by this guy. So what we can end up doing is clicking offset tool. And then what we want to offset that by is going to be 0.01, right? Because that is half of the diameter. That is the radius. That's going to ensure that our torsion spring does not actually go through that circle there. And so what we can end up doing with this is we can extrude this guy. And now I want to extrude that as a surface. We're going to click right here. And then in terms of how far we want to extrude that, we can end up messing around with this. So the total width of this gap is 0.048 inches. I'm going to subtract 0.0, the diameter of our torsion spring. It's basically taking into consideration the radius of the torsion spring on the left side and then also on the right side there. And so if we end up doing that, green check mark. So now what we can end up doing with this guy is we can create the helix. So we can create a helix. And so as you can see, that's going to be the wraparound. Now we do not have 4 turns in there. We actually just have 1 target revolution on there. And then what we want to do is we want to set this up so that instead of it being clockwise, it is counterclockwise. Now it should also be the case where that is starting off just right there. So it should be coming around and then it starts to sweep around where it goes into that circle. If that is not the case for you, you can end up messing with that start angle. You can make that any value. Just test that until you end up getting that to be at that point there. So I'm going to go ahead and press the green check mark now. And so what we can do now is we can create the actual remaining path. So I'm going to go back to plane 3. You're going to create a new sketch. Now what I want to do on this sketch is I want to use that traject tool once again. And I want to go to this point right here where this guy starts. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a spline. And so that's going to be right here, and then it's going to basically connect to this guy right here. And then so now this is going to end up being the case where it's going to come in here, right? It's going to go around this loop-to-loop, and then we're going to create on plane 5, which is the plane that this ends at. We're going to create the remaining part of that torsion spring. So I'm going to go ahead and press green check mark. And then so now we can go to plane 5. You can either click right here or you could find it on there. I'm going to create the sketch. And then so now this is where we want to find where that ends. I'm going to use the use project convert. We're going to select that point right there. I'm going to go back into the spline here. And then now we want to end up sending this down just like this. And then we're going to send this guy to here and then right down there. So now we can also move this down just a little bit here, just like that. We can bring this guy down here as well. We do want to make sure that this guy is coming off of here tangent to that circle. And so we can end up using that tangent. And I'm also going to end up doing it, send this guy down just a little bit more. Then we can move this guy just a tad as well. And then move this guy right there. So now we can press the green check mark. I'm also just going to go back into sketch. Go sketch here. And I'm going to select, oops, not that line. We're going to select this guy and the circle there. It'll flank you. And so now, as you can see, we actually should probably rotate that helix just a little bit. So if I go in here, we want to move it clockwise. So let's try putting a 10 into here. Now that did end up moving it counterclockwise. So I'm going to go -10. And let's maybe put -15 on there. Actually, I'm going to press the green check mark now. Now let's go back into that sketch. Now, as you guys can see, that does look a bit more natural, especially with that tangent. So this one is tangent to this. So now you can see that looks a whole lot better. So we press green check mark. And so now that we have these curves set up, what we want to do is we're going to use the composite curve. So I'm going to create a composite curve. And what we're going to do is we're going to select this spline that we created, the helix, and then we're going to also select that spline that we created as well. Now, if I press the green check mark, what we're going to see here is that curve 2 shows up here. What I'm going to do with curve 1, that's just for a helix, I'm going to hide that for now. We also have that surface in here, so you could also hide that surface as well. But so now what we want to do is we want to create the actual circle that's going to be sweeped. So if we go back into sketch 23, what we can do is I can create a construction line by pressing L and Q. I'm just going to have this be perpendicular there. So we're going to create this line so that we can create a plane. So I'm going to bring back up sketch 23. I'm going to click on this, and then I can go 90 degrees there, just like that. And so now what I want to do in plane 6 is I want to create a circle. So that circle is going to be a center point circle. It should start at that curve, the composite curve. It's going to go out. Now, in terms of our diameter of our torsion spray, it's 0.02 inches. So we're going to go ahead and create that. Now, what we can do is use the sweep tool. We want to create a new solid. The face that we want to sweep is going to be that circle. And then the sweep path is going to be this curve number 2, which is our composite curve. And so now, as you can see, we've actually created our torsion spray. So I can right click this. I could rename this. We can go torsion spray. We have torsion spraying. There we go. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to actually mess with this section view. I'm going to bring this out a little bit so that you guys can see this a little bit better. But that's our torsion spraying there. And so now we could turn off this section view here. So now, as you can see, we have the torsion spring in there. We're going to take a look at this from this view. Everything is good. We'll have a dowel pin that's going to go right through there. Everything looks pretty solid for that. So now let's go ahead and let's create that dowel pin. That's going to be our actual last step. So I'm going to go to the front plane here. I'm going to create a sketch. Then what we're going to do is we're going to end up using these values that we got for our dowel pin. So the dowel pin, in terms of the length, as I'm measuring that out here, I've got 0.257 inches, 0.257 inches. Perfect. And so now what we can also end up doing is we can get that actual diameter too for this. So if we look at the diameter of our dowel pin, the diameter is 0.057 inches. So what I can do here is I'm going to end up creating a center circle. And so what we could do is we could use the use project convert so that we can get that center of that. And then what we can put in here is the 0.0. Now what we should have here, let's try that again one more time. It's what our circle diameter is for this guy is 0.057. So 0.057 inches, 0.057 inches there. And so now we've got that created. What I can do is I can extrude that. And so just as we were saying, we want to go solid. We're going to select that circle there. We're going to go symmetric. And then in terms of that depth, that is going to be the 0.257 inches that we ended up just finding earlier. And so now you can see that that dowel pin fits in there. What I'm going to also do is rename this guy to be dowel pin. And then what we also want to do is change that color as well. So appearance panel, dowel pin is going to be this silver. And so now we can hide this curve as well. And let's go ahead and let's do a little check here. Let's take a look at what we've got created. We're going to also just hide these planes so that we can get a good look at this, good view. But that is how you can end up creating the carabiner top. So we created the carabiner top plastic housing, and then we also created that clip, the dowel pin, as well as the torsion spring. Anyways, hope that video was helpful. If you guys have any questions or concerns, feel free to drop them in the comments. As always, happy Onshape modeling. Catch you all in the next video. Bye-bye.